You've been holding on to strategies that once saved you. They kept you afloat when the world felt cold and uncertain, when you didn't know who to trust, when you didn't know if you could trust yourself. Those old habits, the silence, the control, the constant need to prove you were okay, they were shields, and for a time they worked. But now they're starting to weigh you down, quietly, slowly, like wearing armor in a place that no longer requires battle. You don't need them anymore. And deep down, you know that. This isn't about sacrifice. It's not about giving something up. It's about putting something down that's been secretly draining the strength you keep pretending you still have. Somewhere along the line, you stopped living and started performing. You became the rock, the provider, the protector. Everything the world told you a man should be. You delivered, you endured, you kept going. But behind the quiet strength was a voice slowly fading. A fatigue that didn't come from work, but from misalignment. You wake up and it's like you're watching someone else's life play out. A man who's always reliable, always steady, always fine. But fine is a lie you've repeated so often it started to sound like the truth. And still, there's a whisper inside you. The one that says, this isn't it. This isn't me. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of remembering who you are. Zeno of Citium lost everything in a shipwreck. Everything he thought he needed. Everything he believed defined him. It all sank. But it wasn't the loss that made him a philosopher. It was what he didn't try to reclaim. He didn't search for the wreckage. He didn't rebuild the same life. He started from absence, from silence, from letting go. And from that space, he found truth. That's where real transformation begins. Not with adding more, but with releasing what no longer serves. Seneca once wrote that no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity. He wasn't glorifying pain. He was telling the truth. Suffering strips away illusions. It purifies. It shows you what's real. You've been carrying things that aren't real. Stories you no longer believe. Roles you no longer fit. Duties that don't belong to you. Letting go of those things isn't failure. It's maturity. It's clarity. It's the kind of pain that cleanses, not wounds. And if you've felt a deep, quiet ache in your chest lately, it's probably the part of you that's tired of pretending. So let me ask you something, and don't answer quickly. Sit with it. Really sit with it. What are you clinging to that's actually holding you back from becoming what you want to respect? Not what others admire, not what's convenient or easy or praised, but what you want to respect when you're alone, when the room is quiet, when no one's watching. That answer is where your work begins. And today, we're going to name it, one by one, not to shame, not to scold, but to set it down. Finally, you're not stuck because of what's around you. You're stuck because of who you still think you have to be. There's a version of you built years ago who survived things no one saw. He made decisions you had to make. He built defenses that got you through. But now, that version is outdated, still loyal, still dominant, still whispering, stay the course, be the man they needed back then. The problem is, you're not living back then. You've outgrown his rules, and yet, you still obey, quietly, consistently, as if that man's code is still your truth. You feel it when you hold back your voice, when you say yes just to keep the peace, when you measure your worth by the grind, not by your growth. That's not presence, that's obedience to an internal ghost. And every time you surrender to him, you lose a little more of yourself. It feels noble, even disciplined, but it's betrayal. Silent, consensual, slow. You keep the promises he made, but you've never asked if those promises still deserve to be kept. Your brain isn't the enemy here, but it is a creature of habit. Neuroplasticity doesn't care about who you were. It only reflects what you repeat. You can't change your life with resilience alone. You have to update the program, consciously, courageously, without apology. That requires more than effort. It requires grief, because when you let go of who you were, part of you dies. But what takes its place, that's the man you've been trying to meet all along. Zeno didn't become Zeno until the shipwreck, until everything he thought he was drowned. His clarity began when the sea took what he wasn't meant to keep. Yours might begin now, not by adding more, not by fixing, but by releasing the weight of who you no longer are. You don't need to keep proving that old version of you was strong. He was. He got you here, but he doesn't get to lead anymore. Let him rest. Let yourself begin. You may not say it out loud, but part of you still needs to be seen. Not just noticed, but approved. You walk into a room and feel the tension between who you are and who you think they want. You explain. You adjust. You understate your needs and over-deliver your presence. All for what? A nod, a smile, a confirmation that you're still good, still valuable, still worthy. That's not validation. It's a transaction. And every time you trade your truth for applause, you lose something sacred, quietly, consistently. The cost isn't just your pride, it's your direction. Because the more you chase being liked, the less you remember what you respect. Approval is currency with a terrible exchange rate. It demands your authenticity and pays you in temporary relief. And when it wears off, you need more. You try harder, you shrink again, you perform, just enough to earn silence, just enough to avoid rejection. And like any addiction, it disguises itself as connection. There's a corrosion that happens when a man lives for praise, not a loud one, a slow one. It doesn't break you, it hollows you, until you become agreeable, polished, palatable, but gone. That's not how Stoic men live. That's not how inner peace is built. You don't owe anyone your softness in exchange for belonging. You don't need to be understood to be whole. Dignity doesn't require applause. It requires alignment with yourself, with your code, with the voice inside you that doesn't perform, doesn't ask, and doesn't flinch. Science calls it reward circuitry, the way social approval lights up the brain like a hit of something sweet. But this isn't chemistry, it's captivity. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the harder it is to hear your own voice through the noise. You don't need permission to exist. You don't need agreement to feel right. You need stillness. You need standards. You need to stop negotiating your worth. That silence you fear, that space between what you give and what you get, it's not punishment, it's truth. And when you stop seeking the world's applause, you finally hear something better, your own. That's the only validation that matters, the kind that doesn't expire. You were never just stable, you were suppressing. They called you dependable, consistent, calm, but they didn't see what it cost. They didn't see the moments you swallowed your needs so others could breathe, the times you bit your tongue because peace was more important than being right, the nights you laid awake holding the tension of a house that only stayed upright because you stayed quiet. They said you were the glue, but glue wears down, and you've been cracking for years under the weight of everyone else's comfort. Stability can be beautiful, but not when it demands your disappearance. Not when it means becoming the man who never complains, never breaks, never asks. That's not peacekeeping. That's self-erasure dressed in discipline. Somewhere along the way, they stopped asking how you felt, and you let them. You wore the silence like armor, not out of pride, but survival. Because if you fall apart, who's left to hold the pieces? The danger of being the strong one is this. No one comes looking when you're missing. They assume you're fine. They assume you'll adapt. But every time you suppress what matters to you, you're not being strong. You're disappearing, slowly, respectfully, until one day, you look in the mirror and see a man who can carry everyone, but can't find himself. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That doesn't mean mastering your emotions into silence. It means honoring them without letting them own you. It means being able to say, "I can carry this, but I shouldn't have to." It means setting boundaries that don't require apologies. It means being strong enough to say no. Being stable doesn't mean being unshakable. It means knowing when something needs to shake and letting it. There's a man who spent his whole life holding the family together, never asked for help, never showed pain. Then one day he left, not because he was angry, but because he couldn't find himself in the picture anymore. He wasn't walking away from them. He was walking toward what was left of him. That's not weakness. That's reclamation. And sometimes, the most stable thing a man can do is leave the weight that was never his to carry. You want to be understood. That's human. But somewhere along the path, the need to be understood became a performance. You started offering disclaimers before you spoke. You softened your truths so they'd be easier to digest. You made sure your pain didn't sound too inconvenient, too raw, too real. And in doing that, you became more palatable, but less present. That's not expression. That's a slow erasure. Every time you over-explain how you feel, you're unconsciously asking for permission to feel it. You don't need permission. You're a man. You've bled quietly in rooms that offered no comfort. You've broken behind closed doors and still showed up with a straight back. You know what it means to endure. But somewhere along the way, you started seeking safety in interpretation. You thought, if they just understood me, maybe I wouldn't feel so alone. So you crafted the perfect sentences. You offered context, softness, vulnerability, always with a caveat. But the more you explained, the more you diluted, until your emotions weren't yours anymore. They were edited versions, approved by others. There's dignity in emotional clarity, but clarity isn't the same as convincing. You don't have to translate your soul to be valid. You don't have to be understood to be honest. A man's truth doesn't need applause. It needs weight, stillness, simplicity. When you over-explain, you trade presence for performance. You offer a map to a path you've never actually walked, and that's exhausting. You say everything but feel nothing, because the core remains untouched. The child inside you wanted someone to listen, someone to explain your pain back to you in words that made sense. But you're not that boy anymore. You don't need translation. You need stillness. You need truth. The kind that doesn't flinch. The kind that says, I feel what I feel, and that's enough. That's not arrogance. That's maturity. That's owning your experience without asking the world to co-sign it. There's strength in silence, but not the kind that hides. The kind that holds. The kind that allows you to speak once, clearly, and never repeat yourself. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. You don't owe anyone a perfect explanation for your pain. You owe yourself the courage to feel it without apology. There's a moment every man faces, usually in silence, when he realizes he's been building a life that impresses others, but slowly empties him. You wake up tired, not from lack of sleep, but from living as a function. You keep moving, you keep producing, you keep crossing tasks off the list because slowing down feels dangerous. Stillness feels like failure. But this is the lie, that your value is measured in what you produce, that your worth is earned in hours, achievements, and output, that if you stop, even for a moment, you'll lose your place. But what if your worth never lived in the results? What if it lived in the man you become in the absence of performance? They told you to chase goals, to stay productive, to never waste time, and maybe you listened. Maybe you built something impressive, but somewhere along the line, you started becoming the machine, efficient, reliable, emotionally mechanical. And now, when someone asks how you're doing, all you can talk about is what you're doing. That's not life. That's a form of forgetting. You're not your output. You're your presence, your structure, your values when no one's watching. Productivity can be noble, but when it becomes your identity, it robs you of your soul. Because there will come a day when the to-do list is empty. The applause fades. The promotions stop. And if all you ever knew was how to move, you'll be left not knowing how to be. Zeno started with nothing. No credentials, no empire, just conversations, reflection, space. And from that, he built something unshakable, not in volume, but in vision. His worth wasn't proven, it was remembered. The same can be true for you. But it starts by asking the question you've been avoiding. If I stop producing, who am I? Not to break you, but to rebuild you. Because beneath the busyness is a man who's still whole. Chronically filling every hour isn't strength. It's fear wearing a mask. Studies show it. Constant tasking erodes your emotional presence. It makes you reactive, anxious, fragmented. That's not leadership, that's survival. And you've survived long enough. It's time to choose something deeper. Not slower, not weaker, just real. You were never meant to be a machine. You were meant to be a man. And a man's worth is never measured in output, but in what he holds sacred when nothing is left to prove. There's a kind of anger that doesn't explode. It doesn't shout. It doesn't destroy a room. It just lingers. It walks beside you. It shapes your tone, hardens your silence, pulls at your chest when you lie awake at night. It ages your body in places you can't see, and you think you've buried it. You think because you didn't react, because you stayed composed, you've mastered it. But you haven't. You've avoided it. You've disguised it as stoicism. But real stoicism doesn't ignore pain. It transforms it. And that only happens when you face what you've tried to forget. You're angry. Maybe not all the time. Maybe not in ways others notice. But it's there, at the bottom of your voice. In the way you tighten when asked how you're doing. In the way you flinch when someone crosses a line you never dared to set. You didn't choose this anger. It came from betrayal, from injustice, from giving your all and getting silence in return, from being dismissed, from being misunderstood. And instead of screaming, you swallowed it, again and again, until it became part of your structure. Seneca wrote more about anger than he did about pleasure, because he understood what it does to a man, not externally, but internally. It erodes virtue, it clouds judgment, it turns dignity into defensiveness, and it doesn't need an audience to do damage. Sometimes the most dangerous rage is the one that wears a smile, the one that says, "I'm fine," while slowly withdrawing from everything that once mattered. If you want to know how much of your life is shaped by unspoken anger, ask yourself this: what are you still holding in that you've never dared to say? Write it, not to share it, but to see it, because until you name it, it owns you. And once you see it clearly, not dramatized, not weaponized, just truthfully, it begins to lose its grip. Not all pain needs a confrontation, but it does need recognition. You don't have to scream, you don't have to blame, but you do have to feel. You do have to stop pretending that being quiet is the same as being at peace. There's strength in restraint, but there's weakness in repression, and your body knows the difference. So does your presence. A man who has made peace with his anger doesn't radiate tension. He radiates clarity, not because he never hurt, but because he finally stopped hiding it. That's not rage, that's release, and it begins in silence, but ends in freedom. You wait, you plan, you analyze, you tell yourself, not yet, not until I'm sure. You've convinced yourself that timing is everything, but what you're really doing is hiding, not from failure, from uncertainty, from exposure, from the truth that no moment will ever come with full assurance. Perfectionism doesn't look like fear. It looks like discipline. It looks like patience. It looks responsible, but underneath it's avoidance wearing a suit. You've rehearsed your move so many times in your mind that the opportunity has come and gone without you. You didn't miss it because it was the wrong time. You missed it because you needed a guarantee. Stoicism doesn't ask for guarantees. It asks for courage, for action in the absence of certainty, for clarity in the midst of fog. You think waiting makes you wise, but wisdom doesn't always wait. Sometimes it moves precisely because the ground is unclear. A man stands at the edge of a frozen lake. The storm has passed, but the sky still looks uncertain. He tells himself, just a little longer. Let it all settle. But what he doesn't see is that the storm isn't in the sky, it's in him. He's not waiting for the world to calm down. He's waiting for permission, and it will never come, because no moment will ever feel safe enough to hold the weight of your doubt. The man you're meant to be isn't on the other side of perfect conditions. He's on the other side of movement. Perfectionism is just fear with good branding. It tells you that more time will make you more ready. But readiness is rarely about time. It's about decision, about stepping with what you have, not with what you wish you had. Marcus Aurelius didn't write from a place of comfort. He wrote from the battlefield. His words were born in motion, not safety. Leadership isn't built by waiting until the script is flawless. It's forged in the silence after you speak, in the moments where you act, and your voice shakes, and you do it anyway. That's presence, that's power, that's peace earned through imperfection. Let go of the lie that timing will save you. It won't. Only movement will. Only now, not next month, not next year. Now, before certainty, before permission, before everything is perfectly in place. Because if you wait until it's perfect, you'll wait forever. And that version of you, the one with no regrets, no fears, no doubt, he's not waiting at the finish line. He's waiting at the first step. Zeno didn't become powerful because he rebuilt what he lost. He became powerful because he never chased it again. After the shipwreck, he didn't swim back. He walked forward. Detachment didn't make him bitter. It made him clear. And in that clarity, he became something unshakable. That's what's waiting for you, not in what you gain, but in what you stop needing. The man you've been trying to become doesn't appear when you add more. He appears when you start letting go. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That's not just philosophy. That's direction. That's a man who led empires but still understood the one thing no one could take from him: his choice to respond instead of react. His ability to walk away from illusions and reclaim his focus. The world didn't bend for him. He just stopped bending for it. That's the difference between surviving and leading, between noise and peace. These 7 things we've named, they're not flaws. They're not weaknesses. They're outdated shields. You picked them up when you had to, when there was no one else, when you were too young to know another way. But now you're here, still standing, and still carrying weight that no longer belongs to you. This isn't about dropping everything. It's about finally choosing what's worth holding. not because it's easy, but because you've earned the right to walk without armor. So picture this. You're climbing a mountain, but your coat is heavy, not from the cold, but from stones, each one placed there by an expectation, a role, a voice that isn't yours. And you're exhausted, not from the climb, but from carrying what was never meant to be yours. Letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's choosing your mountain. It's deciding what deserves your strength. And when you finally drop the weight, when you feel the cold air against your back and realize you're still standing, that's when the real climb begins. Lighter, clearer, yours, not to impress, not to explain, just to become, not who they wanted, but who you were always meant to be.